Welcome to the Precision Metal Forming Association's presentation of the Destiny of Manufacturing podcast. I am your host, Dean Phillips. And with me today, put your hands together. We have with us Connie King, who is from the Precision Metal Forming Association and the PMA's Educational Foundation, where she is their Director of Workforce Development. Welcome, Connie. How are you?
I am good, Dean. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Welcome
Wonderful.
Welcome to 2023.
I know, right? Can you believe it? Wow. I don't know. I feel older every day. Oh, wait, I am.
We all are. That's how it works.
We all
right?
are. I know, right? Every minute. Yes.
I know. But it's great to be here in 2023 and hopefully kind of kick the pants out of 2022 and let's move on here.
That's right. Let's go in full steam ahead, right?
Yep. And speaking of full steam ahead, what do you see as the big takeaway over kind of the next 5 years as far as what do you see as the destiny of manufacturing?
The destiny of manufacturing in workforce and workforce development. I think the last time we talked about some things, we were saying that the pandemic has taught us quite a lot, right? And we hear that all the time. But a big thing it has taught us is that the type of workforce we are reaching is dramatically changing, not just in the generational differences of who's out there, but also in the behaviors and motivators of people. It has taught us that our needs and wants out of our lifestyle and our workplace have changed a lot. And that's going to create a lot of sometimes challenges, but really opportunities for manufacturers to step back and take a look at where they're at, where they want to be, where their culture is, where their provisions are and their benefits are, how they take care of their people, how they invest in them, and really how they get them to stay, right? Attraction is difficult, we know. The workforce is changing in numbers, but it's also changing in its diversity and its location, right? As we said, that back in the day, the people who you got to work for you were pretty much within a so many mile radius of your plant or your company.
Right.
Today, those people are all over the world, right? And now sometimes, obviously, depending on the job, they can't do that from somewhere on the other side of the world, but you still have to reach beyond your demographics because those have changed dramatically. And so I really see that there are definitely some changes and challenges, but there are so many opportunities to create a much more diverse and better culture in our organizations in the next 5 years, just based on what has happened and where we want to go.
That's excellent. I think you're spot on. Tell me, how did you get involved in manufacturing and in the workforce development side of things?
Wow. Well, probably let's go back about, a long time ago, a couple of decades ago, when I was involved in a publishing company that also ran trade shows, conferences, exhibitions, and I ran the overall trade shows in power generation and distribution all over the world. Many of those years were spent in Europe and Asia. And in those trade shows were conferences. And so part of the attraction to the attendees was attending learning and development sessions by experts in the field. And that probably kicked me off as having my first interest in learning and development within organizations. This is probably 20 plus years ago. Then over time, I kind of stayed in and out of the learning and development industry in different formats. But about 12 years ago, I landed at a higher ed university around the Cleveland area. And it started with one of their locations in the county where I live. And in that county is a lot of small manufacturing firms where I started to realize that there was a big struggle with learning and development and training in these organizations because they were small to medium size and they didn't really have a lot of the resources or knowledge on how to develop strategies around, training and developing their people. So we created a lot of good, fun things in the county, and we created some consortiums for them to train together. We created some road shows to introduce students to their facilities and all of the opportunities there. And that really got my passion going with helping organizations in this industry. The last higher ed organization I was at, I didn't focus as much on that. So when the opportunity at PMA came up, I was more than excited to get back into the same type of industry and helping the manufacturers, particularly metal formers, really not just survive but thrive, and that's helping their people.
Yeah, and that's what you're doing. We're building our future is what we're doing. So
that's right. That's right.
Yeah, and so when you were talking earlier about how things have changed, I think back at how things used to be, and I look at. You're right. Everybody used to work in and around a lot of the factories. I remember my father worked for General Motors, and I can still remember hearing the steam whistle. You could hear miles away to let people know. And that's obviously you can't have a steam whistle that goes halfway around the world to let your workforce know. So how do we get the word out today that, hey, we want to reach the best and brightest? How do we get the word out to people that this is an opportunity for them?
Right. And that becomes more of a challenge. Sometimes we think that the advancement of technology is so fantastic that it's given us all these wonderful opportunities, and it has, but it also creates another area where a lot of people are like, I just don't know where to start. There's so many places to go and so many places to advertise, and what do I do and where do I start? A lot of that has to kind of go around social media. It's something, love it or hate it, as a lot of people do. It creates a lot of opportunity, and people are on social media. I don't even know what the percentage is, but it's high, however many hours a day.
Yes.
That's where they're at. That's where the younger generation in particular is at. And looking at the different platforms and what demographics are on each type of platforms and so forth. And it gives you a great opportunity to actually show people what you're like. If we go back to like newspaper ads, right? And I can remember, my dad still gets the local newspaper and still goes through it every day. I couldn't tell you the last time I opened a newspaper. Yeah. But, it was just a little ad, right? It was just a little like hiring, blah, blah, blah. And it had like 50 words because it was so much per word that you had to pay for. And it didn't say a lot. It didn't give anybody an impression. And that made people had to go there and actually walk in the door and say, oh, I saw your ad. Well, an upside of today's technology is it gives you an opportunity to show people what you're like. It gives people to show you're happy people. It gives people a chance to see what you do. Show your videos, show your opportunities and things that are there, and really create an image that builds a great atmosphere. And another side of what we really need to do, and this is a challenge I know we've talked about for quite some time, but it's creating that pipeline. And I think over time, going all the way down into like elementary schools, and really companies really kind of need to get into their local communities, right? This is a partnership. Building a pipeline is a partnership, and building partnerships with your community and your education force, with your economic development force, with your chambers of commerce, and being very involved in those local things and getting the word down into the younger generations about what you do. And manufacturing day, and creating opportunities for students to visit you, and changing the mindset of the parents and the schools and the guidance counselors and the teachers and all of the opportunities that are out there. And that takes some work, but it's not just a one-way street anymore. This is a two-way street. The people coming in are one, and you giving back out is the other way. And so companies are going to have to do a lot more interactive work in getting out into the communities rather than just, the fields of dreams. We built this plant and, here they'll come. It's not going to be like that. It's going to really take some work, but it's going to pay off if people do it the right way.
I notice more people now doing what I call CYC, conveying your culture. And and I see the better manufacturers, what they're doing is they're putting out videos all the time. Hey, here's what we're doing. Here's a day where we're recognizing these people and we're acknowledging their contributions to the company. And then we have a day once a month where we're having lunch brought in for everybody. And there's just things that kind of illustrate what the company is. Do you think that HR people now have had to become basically sales and marketing people?
Well, I think we all have to be sales and marketing people. Yeah. I think, yes, HR has had to learn a lot, right? It's not just about comps and benefits and payroll and yes, it's about that because those are the tactical things that are part of the skills of the job. But it's also, you're right, it's a sales and marketing, and it comes all the way down to it really goes, everyone is involved. We used to have this discussion when I was in higher ed, right? That everyone is a recruiter. Everyone needs to recruit students. Because if you're walking across campus one day and you happen to just work at the dining center and you say hello to someone, that you're selling, right? You don't want to call it that, but you are. And the same thing in manufacturing and creating that image of what you do. I see wonderful videos. I noticed that you've also reposted things on LinkedIn and so forth where you're like, wow, cool. I didn't know how that was made. It's this image of really trying to transform people's mindsets and change the culture of things to show just what you can do, how cool it can be, how great the atmosphere is, how good it is to work there. People don't know that until they see it. And the world's come a little bit more tactical right now, right? You kind of, everything's visual. Whereas in the day when we didn't have smartphones and all of the different ways to reach people, it wasn't as visual, right? All you really saw was what's on television or at the movie theater. And now you see it everywhere. And the more visual you are and the better you can project what it is you do and how you do it and what it can be and the advantages of it, the better off that you're going to be. And it's all kind of sales and marketing. We're all in sales and marketing at some point.
Absolutely. I used to tell, I used to give a speech to engineers at the local college, and I said, if you ever get married, you will have at least convinced one person that you're the right person for them, and that's part of being a salesperson. Whether you think you are or you think you're not a salesperson, you have to be, because if you're going to get your idea across, give a very quick example. People that know who Frank Lloyd Wright was when he did training for his young architects, they'd come in and there were three things they had to bring: a sleeping bag because you're going to sleep outside in a tent. That's what you did. You had to bring a T-square because you're doing architecture. But the third thing was you had to bring a suit of clothes or dress clothes because you were going to serve the other people once a week. And part of that was you had to get up in front of people and do something. He says, I don't care what you do. You get up, tell a joke. You can get up and say, tell a story, whatever it is. But architecture is not about drawing buildings. It's about conveying ideas, and you have to get good at being in front of people. And that has always stuck with me, because that's how it is with engineering. Is you have to convey your idea, whether you're selling it to the head of engineering, the president of the company, whatever. You want them to say, yeah, that's an idea we should put money into and where we should go. You have to be able to do that. And I think you're right.
And I think it's partly, and a lot of people don't like the term sales, quote unquote, but, I like to look at it as negotiating and influencing.
Yeah.
But you need to be a good negotiator and you need to be a good influencer. And, and that's really what it comes down to, is kind of influencing people and getting them to see things, not just how you see them, but how they see them and how it all ties together. And that actually, that Frank Lloyd Wright one, that's great.
Yeah.
I love his architecture.
Yeah.
I always loved his designs. They were so unique. But
Yes.
that's a very good story.
Yeah. And when you, like right now within manufacturing, what challenges do you see with workforce development, on the training side? What are some of the challenges we have now? Is it more on technology, the limited attention span, or is it finding the right message that resonates with younger people?
All of the above. There are different types of obviously there's different types of training, and there's online, and that's great, and there's in person, and that's great, and and there's hybrids, and there's different ways to do things. And I think one of the challenges now is time, and I guess sometimes attention span. If things are too long, people, it's difficult for organizations to pull people if they're line workers and stuff, just as they always say, I can't pull everyone off the floor, and I can't take the time to do this. And it's like, well, you have to, because there's not just safety factors involved and stuff, right? But people have motivations and they want to learn, and you want things to be done correctly and so forth. I think a big, and there's a lot, like just jumping up to, like, there's a lot of funding out there for training and stuff too. So I don't think that using an excuse of how much it costs is really valid. One, it costs probably more in turnover to lose someone than it does to train them.
Oh, yeah.
And two, there's a lot of funding through states and federal opportunities to help offset some types of training in manufacturing. Our advocacy group does a great job of advocating in Washington to get different types of workforce development training funds out into the forces so that people can utilize them. And I know some organizations have. Yes, there's paperwork involved. Anything that's quote free unquote is not necessarily easy to do, but it's definitely worth it. And I think some of the challenges with online training is if people wonder is what's the retention of that. It's great to learn skills and certain nuances and supplementing it though, right? Learning and development is a strategy. And you kind of have to look at it as a very broad or bigger picture of where do I start, where am I going, and where do I want to be for all of your different goals, and start looking at things from a perspective of what do I need each of these roles to do, but not just that, but what do the people want to do and where do they want to go, and coming up with pathways for them. And creating these things are sometimes, again, it's a strategy. It's not necessarily just put a Band-Aid on it and one and done and get it over with. So I think some of the challenges are going to be that stepping back and taking time to find those who can help you come up with that learning and development strategy. And for example, our Metal Forming U online training has a fantastic, however many 800 courses of ways to come up with pathways to train by roles and opportunities, and implant training and leadership training, and different ways to really step back and look at, here's my workforce, here's my team, where are they, where do they want to be, where do we want them to be, and really start plotting out those paths for them. So when they walk in the door, they can see, oh, here's where I can go, or here's what I really want to do, and I'm happy to stay there and just keep upskilling me and help me out and make me feel comfortable and good here, and I'm happy. So I think there's the biggest challenge is probably creating that strategy. Mm-hmm. But there are ways that PMA can help with that. Our workforce development team can help with that. There's a lot of opportunity and a lot of opportunity there. It's just going to be figuring out what kind of training and things like that are going to be the best for the different roles that you have in your team.
And it's probably, and I'm just maybe just guessing here, but does that also mean that modularity and having things that are stackable, like stackable credentials or things in general where you can build a course upon each one, does that really become important?
Oh, I think credentials is something that has been talked about for a while, and I think I think it's short story. Yes, I think that taking those steps and showing paths and building upon things and moving on from one step to the next step. One, it's less inundating to the person taking it, right? And it's also more palatable time-wise. It's more palatable for your brain to digest, and it makes you feel as if you're taking these steps to get somewhere. And that is often very fulfilling for people to do that. But it's more economical for the organization. It's more doable in a time frame. It shows that there's a path, and often the best way to do that as well is to somehow incentivize them with each thing they pass, whether that's monetary, whether that's time off, whether that's recognition, whether that's whatever your organization's culture finds acknowledges the fact that somebody's finished something and helps the person realize they finished something and they get acknowledged for that. There's a lot to say just in recognition. And again, everyone has different motivators. Some are financial, some are time off, some are just being appreciated and recognized. But a stacking credential, going back to my higher ed days, has been something that a lot of even higher ed institutions are changing towards stacked credentials to earn up to degrees. Mm-hmm. And the same thing can happen in your non-credit training, which is like what we do, right? And you stack in our learning paths and you move from, example, CNC 1 to CNC 2 to CNC 3, and you keep adding these on. And it's really it has become far more important in the workforce to have these credentials behind you. It gives you the opportunity to learn for yourself, but also improve your skills, and shows that your company is investing in you and you're improving your skills. So you're obviously becoming more productive and more effective and more efficient at your job and or moving up into another job.
And do you think that I heard you mention there about languages of appreciation? Now, I think was it Gary Chapman who wrote that 5 Languages of Appreciation book, and I remember reading that. And one of the things that we talk about with it is, do you think that we need to become smarter? I guess that's a level of that sort of not just that intelligent quotient, emotional IQ, to where we become better at understanding what we need from each other, so that, okay, look, this person may want time off. This person may want, a bonus for doing something. This person may want just to be recognized. And we need to understand what those things are in order to make sure that we're giving them what they want, because they may get something, oh, it's a gift. Well, I don't really care about that.
Exactly. That is a huge part of retention. So it kind of goes all the way back to the attraction, right? So let's say, Jane or Joe comes in the front door and they apply for the job. There are assessments you can do right at that time to see whether or not they're even going to have an interest, a fit, and an aptitude for the job, the potential jobs, not just their skills, but their competencies. What can they, their competencies and capabilities, not what can they just do, but what can they do, right? What can they do now, but what can I do out in the future? Mm-hmm. So you have competencies, you have capabilities, and you have aptitudes that you could do assessments on that for a nominal fee could sort of weed out right there whether or not people could fit into the jobs and the culture that you have at your organization. once they're in and once they're there, then you start looking at those behaviors and motivators. And, really good HR and supervisors and leadership teams will do these types of, there are assessments. There's even basic ones like DISC and MBTI and things that sort of give you what personalities and behaviors people have. So it's like, I am a very data-driven person. So if you come up to me and you start talking to me about your weekend and what you did, I will tune out and walk away. Right. So it helps you learn how to communicate with different types of behaviors. But the motivators are also very important for the retention. And that's exactly what you said. If somebody leaves, they do an exit interview. Maybe they don't even do an exit interview. They just say they left. They have no idea why. And then you get another person who does an exit interview and they said, well, I wasn't making enough money. I'm going to make some money over there. If you don't dive any deeper than that, maybe the money was a problem because they didn't have a car, and maybe they needed transportation, and maybe they needed, right? So all of that can help with the attraction right at the beginning to the retention and the prevention of turnover. And that's where your HR and your leadership teams need to go again to that strategy of learning about their people and building that culture and being involved in their employees more on a, here's your paycheck, thank you very much, and come back on Monday. There's more to it than that. Much, much more to it than that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that's and they talk about that, about the reason people leave. It's rarely because of money and things like that. It's usually because of cultural things. It's just, it wasn't a fit for them. Now, you might have known it on the front end, and that would have saved you hiring 10 people in order to find the right one. But you have to understand on the front end, where are you, and take the temperature of that person. Look, are you going to show up Monday after I offer you this job and you say yes?
Exactly. Right. And if they don't, then why? Right? Was it that you didn't lay out the expectations of the job well? They got in. They didn't know it was going to be loud. They didn't know it was going to be in a room. They didn't know it was going to be in an office. They didn't know I was going to be sitting, whatever it was. The expectations, just vetting people at the very beginning, it's time consuming, yes, but it's going to prevent the cost on the back end, which are going to be far more, again, in your turnover. I think I was in the Lone Star district of PMA, and we had a panel discussion on workforce development, and there's some fantastic ideas laid out on that. And, the companies that were there, and they talked about the culture and some of them of how long people have stayed, and the things that they offer really resonate as to why people are staying. It's that, what's their motivators? What are they offering to their employees, and how are they making them, what are they doing right that is preventing turnover? But the one stat I think I had read recently was even for like an $8 an hour job, which is way below what most things are right now, right? I mean, you can drive down the street and see Aldi putting signs out for $20 an hour. I think the turnover cost is well over $3,500 to $4,500 per person for losing that $8 an hour employee. So imagine what that is if you're $20 an hour or $30 an hour and you're losing them like boom, 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 right? That cost is so high that if you put all of that investment at the front end and you reduced the turnover ratio, it's going to be far more of a value and an investment for you than just opening up the door and saying, I just need a warm body, and out they go.
Yeah.
It's a different mindset.
And you guys have the ability to help with those aspects, correct?
Absolutely. Yes. We have some assessments, available, but we also have some really good teams that are able to come in and help do the types of strategies and creating these types of processes for companies. And we'd be happy to talk to anybody who's interested in that, and how we can help build a great HR process and leadership team that is building a culture that attracts and retains.
Yeah. And that's where it gets to me, is when people, they're really not examining their turnover costs when they say, oh, well, it's going to cost me this much to train somebody. Really, how much is it going to cost you when you have to have 10 times that $3,500, to get one person to stay?
What's that one phrase that says, like, if it could cost you a lot of money to train someone and they leave, but what if you don't train them and they stay?
Right. Yeah.
That's worse, right?
That's right. Yeah, and there are those, I used to say this, and I still say this to this day, is that good people always have opportunities. Yeah. Bad people, they'll stay for anything because they're not going anywhere. So those which kind of degrades the workplace that you work in, because if the good people will always find new opportunities, and there will always be a new place for them. But the people that stay, because there's usually one or two reasons. Number one, they're not flexible. Maybe they're older. Maybe they have a family member they have to take care of. Whatever it is, there's a reason why they stay at a job. Then the other half of it is they're just kind of coasting along. They're not, they're never going to do anything more, and they're not necessarily doing a particularly good job, but they show up. Mm-hmm. And you keep them around, and that's the message you send to everybody, is that, well, okay, we're not looking to excel.
Well, right. A lot of organizations, like I said, are afraid, so to speak, to bring in people, train them, whether it's an apprenticeship program, and then they're like, oh, well, what if they leave? Well, then you did a great job. And they'll be if they leave happy, because you did a great job training them and you invested in them and you provided an opportunity and a pathway for them, and they left for a really good reason, then they're going to be a good spokesperson for you. Mm-hmm. And then you'll bring in the next person who will build up just like that person did. And you create a circle of value to people. And that person becomes a good word of mouth. And, word of mouth is another great way to get people in. Oh, it's a great organization. And, oh, well, why did you leave? And whatever opportunity you had that was better. And it's like, well, they provided me everything that I had to grow. And that's great. And that's a great value to people. Yeah. So the investment in that is worth it. Even if people move on, it's well worth compared to the turnover, like we said.
And there's always people that are good. There's always the grass is greener aspect of things. People leave Google every day. People say how great it is to work for Google, and there's debate over that. But there are people leave there every single day. There's a line to get in there, but people leave there every day. People leave Apple every day, and these are two companies that everybody says, oh, they're great to work for. People are leaving there all the time. So whether it's because they think the grass is greener somewhere else, or because they went there and it wasn't greener, whatever it is, there's a fit for most jobs in the world. I used to do this little test with engineering students, and when I'd go in to speak to them and say, okay, I'm going to list out 10 companies, and I'd put in Google and Apple in there, but I'd list out, about 18 other companies. And then, okay, where do you all want? Well, they all wanted to go to this big company, or a big robotics company, or a big exactly. or Tesla. Okay, they're only hiring one person. Okay, that's it. They're hiring one person. So one of you go stand by those companies. Now, what are the other 15 of you going to do? And they had no answer. They had no idea. And I said, this is the real world. This is what you're going to do when you leave here as an engineer. How are you competing with each other? What makes you better? What makes you different than everybody else? Because you're all going to get the same degree. So unless you're number one in your grade point, what is it? And
they need to differentiate themselves with opportunities beyond that piece of paper. But this goes back to like what you were saying about, or what I had said about the companies, right? Reaching out to make a name for themselves. So Google and Amazon, or wherever you want to know, because of how big they are, Tesla, Blue Origin, SpaceX, whatever. That's what they know.
Mm-hmm.
But the opportunities at so many other companies are either not being heard or aren't being presented right to show the different types of again, opportunity and growth that there are in different organizations outside of those big, huge ones that you hear of all the time. And that's what we tried to project to when we did some of this stuff in my local community, right? Is look what's made right here in your own backyard. Look what these opportunities are. It's not just in the production, but they also have HR, and they also have marketing, and they also have administrative people, and they have presidents and VPs and sales, and they have all these positions too. It's not just about being on the floor.
Right.
Those are great opportunities as well. But there are also many other jobs there. And that's just not projected from the schools all the way down to the parents and sometimes from the businesses. They're not projecting what's available in the different types of opportunities that are there, and showing, like you said, those videos that show what a great culture and how great it is to have these things there. And I think, you're right. That's a standpoint that some of the students programs can also benefit from. And that's where reaching out to your local universities, high schools, elementary schools, and presenting what you do. And then if you had a professor such as yourself who asked those questions, you could say, oh, well, so-and-so was just in last week, and that's a really cool place. I'd rather be there than the tank that spins people and shoots people and spits them out over there.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's the other thing is Amazon does a great job at conveying their, culture aspect. Okay, you do know that you're just going to be delivering packages. That's the job. You can say all the rest about culture, but you're delivering packages. And is that what you want to do for 8 hours a day, lifting packages? And not everybody has the physical aptitude for doing that. And but people get enamored with the culture that they overlook a match for the company, in the role. Okay. Because most companies have multiple roles that they're trying to fill, and maybe this role isn't for you. And we've talked about this before to several other people we've had on the show here before. David Klotz has been on, and when we've talked to him, is one of the challenges is that people think that when you're a company that it's only the stamping side of it. Well, we have other roles. There are people here that are HR managers, and there are people here that are involved in sales, and we have people that are involved in safety. And those are all important roles within those same companies, whether it's a metal forming company or not.
That's right. And it's a lot of the things that just aren't presented. It's an awareness, right? It's an awareness builder that I think, maybe manufacturing has struggled at. Maybe it didn't have to years ago, but it does now, right? Where a lot of the schools and the high schools are testing to the measurements of the states. And that is how many kids go to college and how many kids pass this test and how do they get graded because they reach what level of their state's superiority of a school and so forth. And that's their measurement enforced by the different states or the federal governments or whatever their measurements are. But you dive deeper into that, the point that's missing is that connection in the schools and in some of the communities to the industries, and that's building that connection so that the visual of and the awareness of what they do is there. And it's that two-way street. It takes both the organizations and the communities to get involved with each other to realize where the opportunities are.
Right.
And it broadens and opens up the doors.
Yep. And it's manufacturing isn't what it used to be either. It's, there's robots in there, and there's using AR, VR. There's drones used in manufacturing now and in shipping and everything. And people need to understand that it's not just what you used to think manufacturing is. And accordingly, we also have to train people in all those areas too. So,
yeah, and then everything as the automation really starts in cobots and AI and VR and everything starts to come in and is coming in and has been in. Those are opportunities for organizations to evolve and advance, and it's also an opportunity to invest in training for their people to have those types of skills as well. So there's a lot of doors opening, and that's great news.
Yep, I agree. That's 100% the best part of it is that there are new opportunities, especially like things like additive and 3D printing for metals and all those areas. There's a lot more things. Hey, we're out of time here, Connie. How can people get in touch with you?
Oh, well, you can go to our website, which is pma.org, and you can find us there, or you can reach me via email at cking@pma.org. That's cking@pma.org. Or you can give us a call, 216-901-8800, and just ask for me. Or, again, go to our website. We've got so much great information on there and ways that we can help. And I'm sure you can help anyone reach us as well.
Great. Thank you so much. Everybody go out there and make it a great day.
Have a good one, everyone. Bye.